All right, we're live. Dun,
Do we
dun,
need to say in the chat
dun.
room? I don't know if anyone's there.
Oh, I'll go there. But let me say hello to the chat room. It says there's 3 people.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
I'll start over.
Yeah, very good. You want to give us another count?
Yeah.
I like
All right. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Dune Saga podcast. I'm David Moulton.
And I am Scott Herzog.
And I am Jim Arrowwood.
And on this episode, we are going to be discussing Mentats of Dune, the second book in the School of Dune series by Frank Herbert, or not Frank Herbert, but Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson.
They were channeling Frank Herbert.
Channeling their
They're
Frank.
like, oh, a little incantation going on. Well, you know what it was? Is I think that Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert drank the water
of life.
Water of life, and we're hearing the voice of Frank Herbert in their head as they wrote this book.
Yeah,
I'm convinced that's what happened.
It must have been.
It must, because I mean they took the pill, the Rossack drug, and just totally
did it.
It totally did it in. I mean,
Reverend Fathers.
Yeah, the Reverend, exactly. Reverend Fathers, most definitely. And you know what? I really wish that I would have taken this drug so I could go back and remember actually everything that I read, because holy Hannah, we were supposed to record a month ago.
Yeah. We all did read the book, and then life happened. Just held us back a little bit, and that'll happen sometimes.
Yeah.
More time. Everyone's got more time, which means they're doing more things, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So, there's a couple things that happened in this book. Just a few. 1 or 2. So main storyline, we've got Gilbertus Albans. Yeah, I struggle with his name. Gilbertus Albans and his Mentat school, and basically the struggle with him trying to run the school, to hide Erasmus, to try and cure the Emperor's sister, all while not coming across as a machine sympathizer.
Machine lover.
Yeah, he walked a very, very thin blade.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another story we got going is the Sisterhood has been split in half since the end of the last book, and kind of dealing with how do they move forward, how do they repair that split that's been caused as the first Reverend Mother prepares to die. And then we've got Joseph Venport, and Norma Senva, kind of the beginning of the guild going on, and his strangling of spice and travel, and how that affects basically the whole trade of the universe, versus Half Manfred.
Yes.
Rondo.
Yeah.
Who is taking his crazy to the next level with wanting to get rid of technology. So those are the big things kind of going on. The Emperor's kind of caught in all of this. Yeah. That's a very brief summary of what kind of stuff happens.
We of course have Vorian also kind of.
Oh yeah, very small amount of Vorian kind of trying to find his way, and he decides to make retribution to the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
But stupidly doesn't ever take credit for anything. So it's like hindsight 2020, you know, how much damage control it could have done to have let them know what he did. But anyway, we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Well, so reading through this book, I don't know, it's been a while, everyone, but what do you think about initial thoughts and impressions about this book, this follow-up to Sisterhood, what was happening here, what'd you like, what didn't you like, etc.? Just a real brief overview. Let's start with you, Jim. You're on the spot.
Okay. I really, really enjoyed this book. It was fun to read. There was a lot of action and a lot of neat things going on. And as always, my favorite part of the story was anything having to do with Vori and Atreides. Yeah. And any time that Manfred got slammed was also another time, because
Yeah.
I hate Manfred, and I would kill him myself if I had the opportunity.
Yeah.
All right.
How about you?
Okay, so I also very much enjoyed this book. One of the things I liked about it is it felt like a fast read. It was there was a lot going on, yet at the same time it didn't feel too fast. I don't know how else to explain it. I think the only downsides of my first impression of this book were a couple times the quotes before the chapters directly referenced things that you had read a couple chapters ago. And by directly reference, I mean, it was literally the same exact thing that you just read. And that, I don't know, I was kind of like, it seems a little easy. And the only other downside was when the sister went to the Guinness school. And at first, when they said they were going there, I was like, oh, this is going to be really exciting. The instant she was there, I was like, oh, I'm so done with this place. Just from all the time we spent there with Duncan and everything, I was done. And when we talk about her, we can talk more about that. But
yeah, you know, I too really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was, and maybe not one of my favorite, but still a very well put together book for my enemy. From my end of things, I agree with Jim. Vorian continued when we got back to Vorian, when the storyline was circled back to Vorian. I was like, this is nice, you know. Or I could say Erasmus too. When Erasmus came in, you're like, oh yeah, Erasmus. And so some of our familiar characters, I really enjoyed. It's funny. I just finished a book by Brandon Sanderson. Way of Kings. It's the Stormlight series. It's the second one. I forget the title right off the bat. But I found myself comparing Mentats to this, because in Mentats, you have the Carinos that are kind of running things, right? And you have the Emperor, but then you have his brother, who is much more of an emperor than he is. Well, in this book that we had, that I'm reading right now, that I just finished by Brandon Sanderson, you have the king, and then you have the king's uncle that is much more of a king than this king is. And so that parallel I was kind of drawing between the two. But without coming back to the Dune universe, I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, I definitely had a good time.
Fun to see the Cymex back in action.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
well, there's a lot of characters to break into here. So
yeah, go ahead, Jim. Lead us.
Okay. Everybody's favorite dysfunctional family, the Corinos. They ought to do a TV series, the Corinos.
The Carinos, yes. Be like the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emperor Salvador finally stepped in it, eh?
Yeah. I mean, he just kept going further and further down the paranoid road.
Yeah. He was paranoid. But that being said, they're in the event that eventually got him, like when he gets to Arrakis, right? And he gets, everything kind of implodes. He was at least trying to bring, I mean, one of the reasons he went there is because they did all that legislation on the spice mining operations in order to try and give control back to the central government, whether you agree with that or not. But the idea that he saw these two factions, he saw Venport, and then he saw, Manfred Toronto, and them going at it. And what he was trying to do was to try and bring back some sense of balance to the central government. Now, it backfired holistically in his face, but that was his attempt. And so I think there was something noble in these last moments that we get from him. That being said, he was not my favorite emperor.
No.
And I actually was kind of rooting for Roderick the whole way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, he didn't think through what he was doing, and I think that was his downfall. I mean, Roderick helped him so much, and in this, even Roderick was like this isn't the wrong decision, but we need to think before we launch. And he just made a blank statement.
Salvador continually depended on Roderick. And then all of a sudden, Salvador says, no, I'm going to assert myself, and makes all the wrong decisions, heads off to Arrakis with this big entourage like it's some Riviera vacation or something. and didn't even have a still suit. I mean, the guy was a moron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I the only one who felt like their names should have been switched? Salvador seems like such a badass name, like, oh, Emperor Salvador. So
well,
cool.
you have kind of the root of what salvation kind of in that name, and
yeah,
a little bit Salvador. And so he's not
right,
and he's not. But Roderick. But that being said, Roderick has a great head on his shoulders.
Yeah, and I loved the fact that Roderick wasn't seeking the throne. If there would have been a subplot of him wanting to get the throne from his brother, I mean, maybe it would have been good, but whatever. It just feels like it's played out, especially in the Dune universe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad that was not the case.
Yeah, well, Roderick was very happy being the power behind what was going on without trying to usurp power.
Yeah,
you know,
He
here's
knew what his brother was about.
Right.
Yeah, he did, and Manfred Toronto knew that if he could somehow control the Emperor without Roderick, that he tried to separate Roderick and the Emperor. Didn't he at one point when he came in?
Mm-hmm.
Tried to make the Emperor make his own decisions without Roderick being there.
Oh, yeah, when he came in to demand.
Yeah, when he was trying to demand.
Yeah.
And so there was that.
Yeah. How about Kimata? Torquemada? You can't torque him out of anything. Kimata and Dorothea and their little spat.
Okay, so refresh my mind. Kimata.
That's the Empress, right?
He was no. Kimata was the Suk doctor that did the torture.
The torturer and the truthsayer, right?
Yeah,
right.
Okay. And he got caught with his fingers in the cookie jar.
Yeah, he did. Well, you know what this book really did was develop that whole the truthsayer and truthsaying and voice. These two elements, you would expected them to be really developed in the sisterhood book, but it really wasn't until Mentats we really saw the impact and power of these two abilities. And so truth saying, you saw the full impact of that in their little showdown.
Mm-hmm. It was nice to see like the development of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And although I didn't like Dorothea because of her Butlerian sympathies,
right?
Mm-hmm.
I liked that aspect of her story.
Well, then another. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I'm done.
Oh, well, another thing that Kimata opened the door to was, remember what he got caught for. He was selling human organs to the future Thulaks. That's what got him in trouble. Yeah. So not only is he responsible for starting that, he's also responsible for bringing about the training and the conditioning for the Suk doctors.
Was he the one training them?
No, he was not training them, but if you recall, Salvador...
Well, the reason why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's the reason why that conditioning came about.
You know, Dorothea in the end, and we're jumping ahead here a little bit, but go ahead.
I thought the reason for the conditioning was in the last book. Didn't someone try and assassinate the emperor, and the guy said the conditioning, we have this imperial conditioning, and he said conditioning sounds like a machine.
Well, you could be right. Things are kind of melding together a little bit.
But you know what it was, that one girl, the sisterhood sent to the emperor to poison him.
That's what it was.
And she got caught.
Yeah.
So how about the Venport?
Let's talk Dorothea yet. Dorothea.
Sorry.
in the end, gains control of the sisterhood through the use of. No, it's not. Does she gain control of the sisterhood?
No,
It's
the other one does. Valia.
And so Dorothea, does she eat it at the end?
Yeah.
She bites it at the end?
She bites it at the end.
She bites it. All right.
Well, yeah, Valia stabs her or throws a knife at her.
No, right. she compels her to commit suicide.
Right.
Or, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I thought it was the other way around.
And the fog comes down. Okay.
And the Harkonnen takes it.
Yeah, it was I forgot about that. And so there's this dual agenda that she's kind of going for here.
Well, she has her own sisterhood started up, and it's sanctioned by the Emperor. And so she's training new.
Well, that's Dorothea.
Dorothea, yeah. Aren't we talking about Dorothea?
Well, we just got talking about Valia, so I wanted to make sure I was on the right page.
Okay. So Dorothea's got her own sisterhood going on, but there are people who are Butlerian sympathizers only.
Yeah.
And then the mother, Raquella, brings them all in, which we'll get to when we get to the sisters.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. And then we move on to Venport and his crew: Drago, Ptolemy, Norma.
I really liked the Venport stuff. Well, okay, so one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book was how little Manfred we got. What he was still prominent. Because this book spends a lot of, usually they spend a lot of just making story for all the characters. And the last book had a lot of Manfred in it, a lot of Manfred in it. Mm-hmm. And this book didn't quite need as much story for him as much as it was him reacting to stuff the other guys did. So after a book of seeing so much Manfred, it was great to spend a lot of time with Venport. And I also appreciated, because we complained about in the other book that it was about the sisters, but it didn't feel like it was about the sisters. This book does spend most of its time on the Mentats in some form, and Venport had a Mentat with him. So
that's what Drago.
Yeah, Drago. So it was still very relevant. So
not only that, but had the right hand man of Gilbertus.
Yeah. So I liked the way that his story felt more tied in to the whole Mentats theme that was going on, while I also enjoyed the rivalry and his side of the rivalry, what he was doing there.
The with Venport, you're kind of at a catch-22 with Venport, at least for me. Like, I love Venport. I love the storyline of Venport. He's obviously manipulating the system. He's Manfred's giving his creed that he wants people to listen to, and Venport has his, and Venport's promising medicine, and that whole deal, spice and so on. At the same time, Venport is playing a very dangerous game with the Cymex. Because that's where the Ptolemy storyline comes in, right?
Yeah.
So Ptolemy storyline, and while I love the Cymex, this journey for us started with reading those first 3 books, the Jihad books, and you're like, hey, the Cymex were not good, and while Venport is saying we can't deny technology, it seems like he's stepping over the line a little bit here.
Yeah, and you see it kind of bite back with those grasshopper crickets. That's what they were called.
Yes,
the cricket, and they get loose and they blow up a ship.
Right,
and you kind of see, like, to me, I was reading it, and I was reading, they're getting really close to crossing the line, but Cymex are still people, and then they introduced those machines that were able to think enough to find a certain part of another, and I was like, that, to me, that's crossing that is definitely crossing the line.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, Venport, he was pulling strings all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And I really admire the guy for the way he got things done. The Cymex in themselves in my mind, would not be evil like they were in the Prelude books. What made them that way was Erasmus and Omnius and Agamemnon and all those.
Mm-hmm. Well, if Ptolemy gets in charge,
go ahead.
Yeah, Venport's main reason for putting this army together, he wants Manfred out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I'm on his side immediately.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things that is interesting about Venport is, and we find this out basically through the Emperor or through Roderick, that Venport is in everything. Like he has his hands literally in the banking system, in aviation, in spice production. I mean, and
yeah.
As a Carino, like they have
like Walmart.
They have yeah. So this is buying Walmart basically. And the thing is, the Carinos have a right to fear him because he is, for all intents and purposes, running the government. Who flies the soldiers around? It's Venport.
Well, and he's got control of the spice.
Oh yeah. And the crazy thing is, he's doing all of these things successfully. Like they're not like mismanaged that we know of. They're all running themselves quite well, which really sets the seeds for all of these, big powers when they break them up to becoming what Chom and the Spacing Guild and
they're able to run themselves.
Whatever the bank was called, I think it was part of Chom. I can't remember.
Yeah.
A banking guild or whatever. So it's like you really see all this stuff. The only thing that I felt like was missing, and maybe we'll find out in the next book, is that we have not touched on Ix at all in any way, and that just kind of seems odd to me when we're dealing with all this technology. I mean, but I guess maybe they don't become what they are until later.
Ix doesn't happen until much further down the timeline.
But Ix was always didn't they have a reputation of always pushing the limits?
Yeah.
So maybe it develops that reputation later. There's thousands of years.
Hey, we have one more book to go.
Yeah,
who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
There. Who knows what?
Maybe there'll be a trilogy of books on the Ix.
Yeah, the Ix.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have the sisterhood. We've touched on that a little bit. Raquella, Valia, Valia's sister, Tula, Fiella.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we have Raquella, of course, her supposed suicide to bring the sisterhood together.
Oh yeah.
And the
Martyrdom.
isn't there a sister that kind of has a precog of what's going to really happen?
That's Fiella.
Yeah, that's Fiella has that precog that what's really going to happen, and then
yeah. I liked Raquel in this book. I liked her more in this book than I did the last one, I guess, because there was an urgency to her.
Yeah.
Rather than last time, I just droned on and on. I really enjoyed the last book.
Valia, I have a love-hate relationship with Valia. Like, I love the fighting stances that she's joining and how that's all working for her, right? Mm-hmm. But she has too much Harkonnen in her, and I have such a bad sentiment with the Harkonnens.
Yeah. Here's my problem with Valia, right? Too much of what we know as the strong suits in the sisterhood feel like they're coming from her. She's got voice, and she's basically discovering the Prana Bindu fighting style.
Right.
And two things, plus she's going to be Reverend Mother. It's just, I don't know. It just seems like a lot to me to all attribute to one person just happening to develop.
Now, if she'd have been in Atreides, would that have been better for you?
No, it's just character. It's just character-wise.
Yeah, she was using everybody around her for that goal of getting back at the Atreides.
Mhm.
She was not honest with anybody. She wasn't, except for herself. A very self-centered person.
Yeah, I think if the Atreides were removed, she could be fully dedicated to the school.
Yeah.
But
well, and Raquel suspects that. I mean, she knows there's something else going on.
Yeah, like Tula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. Does Tula die, or does she get away?
She gets away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She lives to fight another day. Now, I'll tell you what, let's move on to Vorian. I want to live on Caladan. That's bottoms down. That is my goal in life, is to move to Caladan.
There you go.
We had Shander Atreides. He was the father of Ori and Wilhelm. And also he welcomed Vorian to Caladan.
Yeah. Adoptive father.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then was killed, presumably by, of course, Tula.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have Virgil Harkonnen also kind of lumped in there?
I put him in there because why did I put him in there?
Well, he goes back to
he goes back and actually works for he works for Virgil for a while. Vorian does. And here's what I did. I've always hated the Harkonnens, the Harkonnens. But Virgil, there's something redemptive, because what you do is you see a father who's lost a son, and he's just trying to make an honest living. And this is a pretty big deal for him. And then how he tries to go and supports him.
I'm drying her hair right now, and I can't find the blue tape thing that she had. And so now her hair is burning.
Okay. You guys can keep talking. I'll be right back.
I don't know what's happening. Mom asked me to have the blue tape thing. I want to say, I don't know where it is.
Sounds like a crisis, huh?
Crisis. Might just be easier to wait.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he goes back to work with Virgil, and then gives him, like, basically saves the Harkonnen family.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny that Scott's bringing up this stuff about how, what did he say just a second ago? About how he hates the Harkonnens. Scott's bringing up the stuff about how he hates the Harkonnens and how they're usually evil. But if you remember back, like, the people living on Lankavel until Feyd-Rautha and the other brother, they were all the parents were really nice and, like, loved the land. It was the Harkonnens on Gidi Prime that were really the evil ones. And you can kind of see the bloodline from Virgil. You can imagine that these people, they may have their seated dislike of the Atreides, but they're not evil people quite yet.
Well, I think with Valia and Tula surviving, they are so poisoned with hate that is going to lead to the Gidi Prime Harkonnens that we have learned to hate. Because I'll tell you what, before that, I did not really hate the Harkonnens. As a matter of fact, I thought Xavier Harkonnen was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this with the whole the Harkonnens here. There is one other son left. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you would think that the Harkonnen line survives through him. Is that correct? Because this still, despite it being modern, whatever, typically the females don't pass their name on down through.
Unless one of the sisters have a bastard son, I guess.
Which I guess is possible.
Since they're sisters.
And we don't know.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Of course, now Valia Harkonnen is going to be in charge of the breeding records.
Right.
That is true.
So she's going to know what direction to move things in.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
It'll be, I'm sure we're going to get more of it in the next book. I mean, it's definitely not over.
No,
So
definitely not.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if we get a closer look as to how that, how it continues on.
Yeah. Vorian sure had
without
close shave, didn't he?
Vorian. What's that, Jim?
I said Vorian sure had a close shave, didn't he?
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
Yes. He's had a couple of close shaves.
Yeah.
The robot twins.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that was close.
To see where his story goes, because I feel like he's been peppered in here through these 2 books without really, other than when he demanded protection for his home, without any real impact on the bigger story.
Well, now I thought about that as we talked about Vorian. Like, what is the purpose of Vorian in here, other than to help us stay connected? Okay, arguably, he's there to help us stay connected to the Harkonnens and the Atreides. Thanks you. The Atreides line. He's helping us stay tied into that, because otherwise these books have nothing to do with the Atreides line.
Right.
And the only reason we're following and it gives, I guess it gives the Harkonnens a reason.
Enemy.
Yeah, an enemy.
Well, but Vorian,
this storyline, but
yeah, he was the reason that Abulard Harkonnen had his downfall. Okay. And Abulard, in as far as Vorian is concerned, earned his disgrace and earned his punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Vorian did not intend for that to extend to the entire family.
Right. Right.
Okay. So I think what Vorian is there for is to show himself being noble, doing his level best to help the Harkonnen family continue on and not punish the entire clan because of the disgrace of one person.
Well, you know, and the irony of that is, of course, by the very end of this book, there, he leaves Caladan with which one's left? Ori, Wilhelm.
Wilhelm.
Well, Wilhelm. He leaves with Wilhelm, and they're kind of on a mission now to hunt down the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
Here's the hunt down Tula.
Yeah.
Here's the hypothesis I had about mid-book when she started training Tula pretty hard and stuff. I thought, because we haven't been hearing about any other Atreides other than Vorian at this point in the book, my theory started to build up that the Atreides line was going to be started by Vorian and Tula. Like that she was going to be sent to get him. And by this, because he looks like he's in his 20s, and she was going to be sent, and she would be roughly in her 20s, and she was going to go and fall in love with him. And that would have been the start of the Atreides line on Caladan. Obviously, it did not happen that way.
No.
But or at all. But for a good portion, I was like, I bet you that's going to be the plot twist. They're gonna hook up. She's gonna have Vorian babies. But
little Atreides running around.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And then we have the Mentats school. Gilbertus. What a tragedy.
Yeah, definitely a tragedy. But let me say this. I'm sticking by my theory from the last show. I'm still convinced that Anna and Erasmus are going to merge as one by the time book 3 gets around. The woman we see at the very end of Dune is Anna with Erasmus embodying her.
Okay, this is my
I'm still there.
Antithesis to yours.
Okay.
So
suck it, Dave.
So yeah. So the whole point of the Kwisatz Haderach in the final book, with Duncan becoming the Kwisatz Haderach, the ultimate Kwisatz Haderach, because he merges with Erasmus, is the fact that before that there was never a human human robot synthesis like that ever before. And Erasmus is fully flow metal at that point. So if he was merged with her, he would be not, he would have some biologic to him. Also, that would make more her the Kwisatz Haderach than him.
So okay, I hear you, but maybe it's not so much of a merging here as he takes over her.
I could see him.
So like he takes over her and controls her form, because Duncan's much more of a legitimate merging of the two working together.
Yeah.
But maybe in this case with Arav, he comes in and takes over her.
I could see him downloading Anna into his brain.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, and he did bring up the idea of a biological body for himself, so maybe he could take over Anna's body.
That's right. That's what I'm kind of saying.
But I don't think by the time that we see him later, I don't think he's the same form.
You don't think it's Anna?
No, because it's a hologram.
Yeah, it's still be Anna.
As the hologram?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I think that's a little stretch.
Maybe. We got to ask Brian.
We got to ask
Brian. Here we go. Brian would know.
Yeah. I mean, he only writes it.
Yeah. He, after all, he did take the Rossick drug and channeled Frank Herbert.
Channel Frank Herbert.
So he knows.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
And we have the Freemen, and in the person of Tariff.
Hey, before we do that, Jim, do we need to say anything else? We jumped in there and kind of skipped over Gilbertus. Do we need to talk about Gilbertus and the way he's kind of walked the line and tried to please both sides?
Sure. Go ahead, Jim. You start.
Yeah. Well, Gilbertus, I just felt bad for him. Being caught in the middle the way he was. And wow, his death, that was, Manfred more or less tricked him into that. Oh well, we're not gonna hurt your school, and your school will continue to exist, and everybody will be safe. Oh darn, we found out that you're a machine sympathizer, so you're gonna have to die.
Huh.
I'm surprised that it took him that long to put it together, being that there was archival footage of Gilbertus around.
Yeah. Also, I was waiting for him to discover it in the journals.
Yes, I kept waiting. Like, when are they going to read about Gilbertus? And they never read about him in there.
Yeah.
I did think about that too. I do like Anna's escape from the planet when she runs into his second command.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Drago.
Yeah.
With in the beginning, I felt sorry for him having to walk that line, and then by the end, I thought he was being an idiot. Like after,
yeah, I agree.
Around the time that Drago came to visit him and offered him a way out, like right before that, I'd started to be like, "All right, dude, like
take it.
It's time for you to leave."
I was literally almost like shouting at my audiobook, "Come on, do it!"
Gilbertus died like a Klingon.
Oh yeah.
Defiant to the end. He was awesome.
Kapla!
They should have given him a bat left. That would have been great.
Oh, that's perfect. So Gilbertus was the Dune equivalent to a Klingon.
Dune equivalent to a Klingon.
A warrior's death.
I liked learning about the Sappho juice kind of coming into play too.
Yeah,
cool.
just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you mentioned the Fremen.
Yeah, Tariff and the other Fremen that went with him, hired by Joseph Venport to sabotage rival company ships.
Well, this is one of the areas that you kind of see. This is one of the areas of Venport that, while you like Venport, you see him as not being entirely noble.
Right.
Yeah, and you see that.
Well, he's a businessman.
He is, and you see that in the process, Tariff kind of loses himself, loses his identity and what it means to be on Arrakis, so much so that he kind of goes by himself. He thinks he kills Manfred Toronto at one point and ends up not.
Mhm.
I was glad we didn't get too much into the Siege stuff. Kind of okay with them the Fremen not being a big plot point to this story and stuff. It was interesting to see the idea of him leaving and then being rejected when he got back, and his girl kind of just giving up on life, just dying.
Yeah,
just like laying outside and dying. That was kind of a rough thing for him, but I thought it was interesting to kind of see, to take that temptation and you can go on an adventure. It kind of reminded me of, I don't remember if it's a Disney story or what it was, but it's like the whole idea of like you can't go home. And it's not that home's not there, but like the adventure changes you, and your home will never be the same. So does your adventure really ever end? Like once you step out,
right?
So
very true.
Well, the only person really good is Bilbo.
Yeah, it's true.
But only for a couple years.
That's right.
And Tara, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Good.
Okay. What I really was neat about this guy is he left Arrakis. He was very happy to see all these really neat things, and his friends just absolutely didn't want anything to do with it. I want to go home. I want to go home. And he's like, well, look at this. We've got oceans and we've got water falling from the sky, and we don't have to live that way.
Yeah. But then the girl was like, had the opposite effect where she was like, I see all this stuff and I don't want any of it. I don't want to go home, and I don't want to live in any of these worlds.
Yeah.
I don't want to live, basically.
And then finally we can talk about the Butlerians, Manfred, Inari, and the mob.
Yeah, we know you saved the best for last, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Here's my thought. I want to talk about Inari first, if that's okay with you guys. So we have Inari Duncan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Idaho. Sorry, Inari Idaho. I'm sorry. And when we first meet Duncan, he's kind of in like this disgraced family, right? That's they're kind of surviving. They aren't warriors or anything like that, right?
No, his family. When we meet in the prequel books, when we meet Duncan, his family is delegates, and they've been betrayed.
But they aren't warriors, is what
No.
They aren't warriors. Yeah, so something has to happen to take Inari from Swordmaster to a family whose name is no longer associated with that Swordsmaster.
Right.
So we're going to see that, I think, in book 3, that transition, that something's going to happen here with the Butlerians, and Inari is going to be like either disgraced, left destitute, or relegated to some other position. I don't know.
Maybe she gets totally wiped out. Maybe he's from a different line of Idaho.
He could be, but why bring in the Idaho line then?
That's true.
Well, let's look at the way things have progressed. Okay. Manfred starts out following the rules that machines that imitate the human mind are bad. Destroy all those. Okay. As time goes on, he's destroying toasters and microwave ovens and anything that is mechanical.
Right.
He's trying to get the galaxy Stone Ages, and he's gone too far. And finally, somebody, and I think it's Joseph Venport, is going to win out, and we're going to continue or go back to the ideal of you shall not make machines that imitate the mind of man. And that's going to be Inari's downfall.
Interesting thing to posit there.
Yeah.
I think that Venport's stuff is going to be too much to the other side, which is going to give
a balance.
Yeah,
give the balance.
In the
restore
end,
balance to
balance.
the Force.
Yeah, Anakin will obviously come through in the end.
That's right. He'll bring balance. He'll bring balance. It's okay that Manfred's killing toasters as long as they're the BSG toasters.
Yes.
Yeah. But Butlerians. Yeah, we don't need to talk about Manfred too much. I mean, you see the crusade and you see the what he did on where were the Cariners living? What
Seleucus.
Yeah, so what he did in Seleucus Secundus by inciting riots, the riots on one of the other cities where they kind of take out the Messene sympathizers.
Yeah.
You see that what he's doing is very brutal, and it's this controlled chaos is what it is, and that's going to come back.
And what you get that is he in this book more than the last book is he recognizes his inability to completely control the mob.
Yeah.
And you also a couple times where he's like, even if I said no, they would turn against me.
Yeah. And you also see it here where he's acknowledging his use of technology and his fascination with Erasmus.
Yeah. Well, something else comes to mind. And did you feel the undertones of Inari kind of overstepping her bounds just a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
Really, really starting to get pushy. Okay, we need to do this. We need to do that.
Or
Manfred trying to hold her.
Can't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that going back again to the downfall of Inari, that could lead to it too. She may just decide, well, Manfred is not Manfred anymore, so I'm taking over now.
Right. Absolutely.
Maybe. She is in love with him. I would see more her using a machine to help him and then him disowning her.
Well, they make a big point to talk about how she's never come against him in public. But only in private does she voice her real opinion. Maybe that changes.
Yeah, because she's trying to mother him a little bit.
Yeah. So maybe that changes in book 3.
She comes against him and has to be punished.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, let's move on. Man, we talked about characters quite a bit here. We had a lot more to say than I thought we were going to have about these characters. So I know this might be some territory that we already traveled, but favorite points of plot. What were some moments here that stuck out to you and made this story come alive for you? David, let's start with you.
Made the story come out alive. I mean, so much of it, I don't know. I felt like I read this book so quickly. It all felt like one big jump of stuff. I'm trying to think of anything that really stuck out.
We can come back to you.
Yeah, come back to me.
Jim, how about you?
The stuff on Caladan. It was so relaxed and laid back and just people living their lives and trying to earn a living off of out of the ocean and things like that. It was very calming. It was nice until, of course, Tula came on the scene. But
uncle gets murdered, son gets hacked, whatever. So relaxing, Jim. I'm just kidding.
Well,
no, I do hear you, and I hear because when you initially he's stepping back into world, and what they do is they really paint life in Caladan. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying.
I think for me, I'll go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think we're just getting set up for. If the book had come in order, I think we would be getting set up for life on Caladan with the Atreides as dukes.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that's where book 3 will end up, with him coming back to the only place he really felt was home, even though this is happening.
Right. He's going to save the day, and as a reward, he'll ask for Caladan.
That's right.
Or something.
Yeah. Good deal.
For me, moments I really enjoyed the view into the Mentats school as it was running. I really liked the Mentats a lot, and I think one moment it's so small, but I really enjoyed was when Roderick and was it the mother-in-law?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They come to visit Anna, and just like the whole interaction where Gilbertus goes to Anna and he talks to her, and she's very like crazy Mentat mode, and then he goes and gets them, and they come in, and she's all like built herself up to try and be as normal as she can be while they're there.
Right.
And then during that whole time, someone gets eaten right outside the window, and like that whole thing of like how dangerous the Mentat school is at the same time. I don't know. I really liked that kind of view into the life there, and how, Gilbertus is like, well, people get hurt at all the schools and die at all the schools, and why should mine be any different?
Right. Yeah, I think for me, a favorite moment. Can I share two? I have two favorite moments.
All right.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Thanks for your permission, David. But the first moment I was going to say was Rob and the loss of his child.
Oh yeah.
Because you felt that loss, and you felt that grief, and it was an innocent mistake. A nanny takes a child out to watch a parade, a riot happens, it kills the child, the nanny, and you just feel his heart. You feel his fury toward Manfred Toronto, and you understand that, heck, if my kid that happened, I would be pissed. And you're right there with him. It was one of these places where I really connected with the emotion of what was happening there. So that was the one moment, and I wouldn't say it was like a defining moment, but it certainly did something. It's certainly going to play into the way Roderick will treat Manfred Toronto in the long run. Yeah. You better believe that's going to impact.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for that.
Then the second moment that I really liked was the development of the Simek Walkers and the way they did it this time, and the way they used failed navigators to kind of start that. But then even the person, then Ptolemy and his one friend, get actually put into these Simek Walker bodies, and you see him kind of rise to the next level of evolution. And I did like that. I did like that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
But any other moments for you guys?
My second would have been the Simex for sure.
Okay. Jim?
Well, my second one would be, I would have to go along with David, I guess, the Mentat school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
All right. Well, do we want to talk about themes?
Sure. I mean,
we've covered a lot already.
Yeah. The killing of Salvador. Let's talk about that a little bit, because Venport does this and almost gets away with it.
Yeah, almost.
Almost. And then doesn't, and then Norma to the rescue, who's
always to the rescue.
It's convenient to have an aunt that just like shows up out of nowhere to rescue you, you know?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's really good plot development cliffhanger for the next book.
Oh yeah.
And to me, it served its purpose to keep me interested. So,
well, you know that Roderick isn't going to love Manfred Toronto now because of his own kid, and because of what happened to his brother, will not love Venport.
And eventually will cause all the splitting up, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll get into our...
But, yeah.
I wonder if, with Venport getting away, if that isn't the roots for Ix. Because Ix is kind of a secretive place.
That is true. Venport's not going to be allowed to do... He's probably not going to be allowed to run the navigator. He's not going to be allowed to run the bank. He's going to be ousted, but you better believe he's stored up enough money that he can
do the underground,
have his own planet, right?
Yeah.
I bet you're right. I'm with you in that, Jim.
Yeah.
And they do build the ships for the navigators there. So
Yeah.
you could be onto something.
Hmm.
I like that thought line.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, yeah. Any of these others that you want to talk about as far as themes go?
I think we kind of hit on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
Let's move into favorite quotes. And Jim, you want to lead us away here?
Well, David, your spot is blank in the notes. Do you have any?
It is. There was a quote. There was a quote that was a direct quote from like 2 chapters before, and it was Ptolemy just saying one of his things, and it was at that point of the book that I stopped caring about the quotes in this one.
Oh.
Yeah, I just couldn't. I don't know. I just stopped paying attention to them.
So you're anti-quotes in this book.
In this book, I'm anti-quotes.
You are anti-quotes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I'm not
Scott?
anti-quotes, Jim.
Look
I have 3 quotes. All right, so
at you.
couple quotes here that stuck out for me. And I like these. Absolute rules are for unthinking people. Sheep require fences. Humans do not.
bravo.
Yeah, and this quote made me think of the quote by Obi-Wan to Anakin. Only the Sith believe in absolutes. That sort of thing. That the fact that there is some. You do have to look at situations case by case and evaluate them based on it. So, So I like that quote. Another quote I really liked: "Human imagination is a powerful thing. It can be a sanctuary from difficult times, a catalyst to change society, or the impetus to create marvelous works of art. On the other hand, an overabundance of imagination can inspire paranoia that impairs one's ability to interact with reality." So thought of our Salvador in that one. And yeah. And then the last quote, this is from Gilbertus. He says, "What do all our accomplishments matter if they do not last beyond our lifetimes?" You think about that, like when we're gone, who's going to care?
Yeah. And this coming from a guy who was
300 years, a couple hundred years old, right? But only
that sounds kind of fatalist, though.
I'm thinking like okay, the church that I'm part of just did a study on Ecclesiastes. Talk about a book that is depressing, like everything's meaningless. And so I thought of that, like when they're saying the guy across the quote, like, nothing matters. It's meaningless.
Well, and then I think about teaching, and
it's meaningless, Jim.
Well, and a person feels that way sometimes. You just feel like, everything is against you. Nothing's going well, and then all of a sudden, someone will say something, or someone will come by after a concert that was a student years before, and they'll say something really neat. It's like, wow, I really miss band. And well, you did have an impression on somebody at some point.
Yeah, that's probably it's probably that impact that lasts beyond. If we want to talk about living life and our legacy, it's what we impart to those that follow us, and then them imparting that same knowledge or learning beyond them, and that's probably the way we live on.
Yeah. Otherwise, see now, Scott, you don't experience any of the disappointment as a teacher because you teach all the advanced placement kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They all the AP and no, that's BS. That's not true at all. But you're right. There are students that'll come back that do make it worthwhile. But and many times it's not the English that I'm teaching them that they remember. It's moments. It's them being in my class or me valuing them.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. And my son, for instance, he's a Schwann's man. He goes down to the town where I teach, and being we share the same last name. That opens a lot of doors for him, and he makes a lot of sales.
See,
And-
there's
and-
power. There's power in the Arrowwood name.
Well, and he comes back and tells me, "Oh, this person, you remember them? Oh, yeah, I remember them. Well, they were talking about you and blah blah blah." And it's like, it's all BS, really, but you know.
Yeah, but it's all a connection. It's a way to connect.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and obviously they aren't like, they don't see the Arrowwood name and go running. So that's positive.
Yeah. Like I did.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah, unlike Dave.
Get chased out of town with pitchforks and
Well, as long as they're they're chasing with a ballast set, you're good.
Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
And bring out the loot.
Well, I found some quotes.
Yeah.
Narrowed them down to 3. Every hammer has the innate capacity to strike a nail. Every human mind has the innate capacity for greatness. But not every hammer is properly used, nor is every human mind.
I did like that one.
Amen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, there is an awful lot of that, examples of that going on now. Let's see, just repeating.
I log into my Facebook feed and I see that illustrated.
Oh yeah, not hard to find.
No.
Here's another one. Another one I found. Just repeating a statement often and with great vehemence does not make it a fact. And no amount of repetition can make a rational person believe it.
Well, that's what I see when I open Facebook. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on no matter what issue, you've got hard-headed people on both sides, and they will
Yeah,
not
well,
listen
people
to each other.
People stop listening, and that's the thing. Like, it's okay to have your own opinion on it, but you know, by God, let's when do we become a society where, Jim, you have an opinion and I may not agree with it, but I can still listen to you and find out why you believe it. And David, you believe something different. You know, when did we become a society where we no longer care what anyone else thinks but ourselves? You know, I think because, you know, I'm okay if I'm okay with you believing what you want. If I can share a counterpoint, great. If you can listen to me and I can listen to you and we can still be friends at the end of the day, so be it.
Yeah, it's called a dialogue.
It is, you know.
And there is no such thing anymore. That word has left the language.
You know, there was a New York Times columnist. This is my English teacher coming out of me, so just forgive me. About a 2005 article. So before the iPhone came out, this guy was talking about, he wrote an article called iPod World. And the subtitle was Narrowcasting Our Lives, and how people these days, what do? They narrowcast what they hear. So instead of the old days where you listen to radio or watch a news channel and whatever they delivered, you got, there was none of this cable crap that you would be able to like tune into your political correct version of the news. You just heard the news, whether you believed it or not. So what have we done now with iPods, podcasts, and I love podcasts, mind you. But you know, what we've done is we've chosen, well, I'm only going to listen to podcasts that agree with me. I'm only going to follow people on Facebook that agree with me or listen to people that agree with me. And our views aren't challenged, and we've seized the dialogue. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, step off my soapbox now. But that just makes me think of it. And I'm telling my students every year, I said, I hate election year cycles because no one listens to each other anymore, and we don't really have dialogue. It's just, let's slam this person's attack list. Let's pick apart this person. Oh, this person's doing this. And I'm not saying there's certainly not some issues in politics that we should be concerned about, but no one's listening to each other.
Right.
No, they're not. And which is leading to, rather than the media reporting the news, but they are making the news.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these people think about CNN. How many personalities can you name on CNN? There's quite a few. The people that are supposed to be reporting the news have become celebrities. They're not reporters.
All right. But I'm with you. This quote is a very good quote, and I'm with you, Jim. This idea of discussions. It's very good.
Well, my last quote is Gilbertus replying to Inari when she tells him that your death sentence, will not be rescinded. This is the Klingon coming out. He says, Manfred is a man of clear-cut convictions. He follows a path that allows no room for learning or growth, to his detriment.
This plays into our last conversation.
Yeah, it does.
When you don't have dialogue or discussions, you leave no room to learn, grow, and benefit from what other people have learned, grown.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's move on to some of our final thoughts here.
Okay.
Let's rate this book. Scott, you go first.
4.
4 out of 5.
Yep, I liked it. It was a good book.
Yeah.
Not 5 out of 5. I relegate that to very few books, but I really like this book.
Okay. Jim.
5. Easily.
Ooh.
5.
Yeah, 5 to the last too.
Yeah, I really am enjoying this series of books a lot.
Okay.
Probably because I know the people.
Yeah. That, and we're near the end. And so that's why he's enjoying it.
No, I don't want him to end. I want him to continue on, write more.
I am ready. Well, me too. But I am ready for us to get into some fresh material that's totally out of the Dune universe.
Yeah.
But
I do like this. But.
I'm going to give it a 4, and here's why. It was almost a 5. But the quotes thing really bothered me. And it was definitely a 5 in my head until the moment they stepped on Ginaz. And it was the same old Ginaz scenario. It didn't feel like a proto Ginaz, or for lack of a better term, of like a younger school or anything. It felt like the exact same mind game stuff that Duncan went through. She wasn't there for very long, but
she was there to learn, I guess, a little bit in order to.
Well, she was going to do the whole thing, and then she got called back.
Right.
And that section is not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's not like this is a bad part of the book. I lacked complete and total empathy with that story, and as a result, I got to give it a 4 out of 5 because it didn't. The first book, I think I gave a 5 out of 5, and we'll see what happens in the next one. But still, I am probably, if the third book holds up in the same quality as these last two, then this trilogy, or if it becomes a quadrilogy or whatever, is probably my favorite Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson set.
Yeah, I would have to go along with that. The Prelude books, and then this one.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, so what are we looking forward to? What do we think is going to happen in Navigators?
Well, we know you think Erasmus is going to turn into a woman.
That's right. Well, he does, or inhabit or take on the form of Anna.
Yeah. I am looking forward to the splitting of all the things. And the implementation of houses, with ranks.
I think that we are going to see the creation of Ix. I like your theory, David.
That was Jim.
Oh, Jim, was that your theory?
Yeah.
I think we're going to see Venport being the head of the new Ix.
Yeah, I think that would be cool too. I think that's actually a really great idea. Jim?
I hate to say it, but I think Vorian's luck is going to run out. I think we're going to lose Vorian Atreides.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise me. We had Gilbertus knocked off, so.
I think we're going to get more babies from him.
I think Wilhelm will be the one that starts.
Okay. All right.
Well, I can see Wilhelm starting that, but we might be surprised. He may end up surviving. I definitely don't think that that the Harkonnens are going to take out Vorian.
No,
because that hatred persists into the the main Dune books.
Right. That's true.
So
maybe he does something to get back, and reignites it to an even greater.
If he kills, what Tori? What's her name? Tula. If he kills Tula, you better believe that the sisterhood and his father's not going to be liking Borian too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot to see there. Well, it's going to be a while till we have another book. It's a couple months.
September.
Right? That's only 2 months.
Won't be terrible.
No.
Won't be terrible. We've got a listener feedback show coming up, so stay tuned for that.
And for information on what we're going to be doing next.
Our next adventure, yeah.
Next adventure, yeah.
More info there. But in the meantime, don't let that stop you from letting us know what you think of the book, because when we come back, we will get right to your feedback. So if you want to get in touch with us in any type of way, great ways to do that. Facebook.com/Dune Saga Podcast. Twitter.com/Dune Saga Podcast. Email us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can call the hotline
at 1-260-577-CHAT. That's 1-260-577-2428.
Yep.
Call now. Operators are standing by.
There you go.
Yeah.
So once again, for the Dune Saga Podcast, I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood. And may Shai Hulud clear the path before you.
Boom.
Boom. Well, let's take a few minutes and then go through the listener feedback.
Yeah, so we can step away for a little 5. Is that okay, Jim?
Yes, please. I could use the break.
All right.
So see you in a minute.
Yep.
Okay.
Let me start a new file.
Yeah.
Some good conversations. There did some lag, and
Yeah,
it ended up being just a little over.
yeah, it'll be fine.
It'll be good.
Yeah. All right. Just want to stand up.
Yeah. Do you want to go down and get something to drink, or
Yeah.
do you want more coffee?
Yeah, probably. Let's do that. I just don't want to stand up and
Do you know your introduction reminds me of the old Regal Cinema roller coaster? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just gotta get the wording right and stuff, and then we'll be solid.
Welcome to Regal Cinemas. Refreshments are available in the lobby. And please, keep our theater clean by disposing of trash in specified containers.
Is this listener feedback current?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I created a new listener feedback.
Oh,
look, you
You'll
brought us
work
that
on it.
laugh. Here, let me share this new listener feedback.
Look at you go, Jim.
Well, this is one of my 2 batlets. This one's made out of foam rubber,
All right,
So
I
I
shared it with you now. Go ahead.
so I can take it to the con tomorrow. I've got a real one for home defense.
do you sleep with it under your pillow? That's the bigger question.
And then I've got that one.
I was like, why can't I hear
My
Jim?
letter opener, and I've got
Are you
That
gonna
one.
pull it out to open your box?
I have to. I slit the box open so I didn't have to try to do that.
Okay.
I do need to make another file.
You peeked.
Jim.
No, honest to goodness, I did not look at it. All I did was cut the tape on the top.
There we go. When are we going to do that? Like beginning of the show?
Do you want to do it? You can do it
I
at
don't
the
know.
end.
We can do it at the end. That's fine.
It's a good
Do you want to talk about the orbital sword first?
Let's do it before that. We'll end our Dune stuff
With the orbital sword.
with that, and then we'll talk about before we talk about this.
So you want to package before
Orbital Sword.
All right. Very
Yeah.
good. All right. Yeah, I shared some new listener feedback stuff with you.
Okay, I got to create a new file.
So we had a great conversation with my wife about the orbital sword and a way that we can get more viewers. So we'll have her in the background, like on a screen behind us, and we'll like superimpose it on video, because we can do that with like all we need is to work with like a video software that
does it.
Yeah. Or maybe we can just you like you do on Twitch, have the cutout of our heads
Yeah.
be there, and the main and
the main thing.
yeah,
is
and the main thing is just my wife in a bikini reading whatever book it is that we are talking about that week.
Holy moly!
And she's up for it. So
it was pretty much her idea.
David came up with the idea of her wearing like the Madonna bikini, but she wasn't really thrilled with that.
No, she's got too much class for that.
Yeah,
Scott can dream.
I don't need a dream.
Oh!
Oh, he's living the dream.
Let's see if I can figure out how to turn my before we get started. I can turn my screen stay on, so I don't have to keep.
Yeah, what's with that?
Keep hitting my. It's a new phone, so.
Okay, I believe I have got the first one here is from Marco, right?
It should say orbital sword. I don't see you in it. There's a new one I just shared with you.
Oh,
Just a
okay.
listener.
Swired.
Ooh. All right, shared with me. Listener feedback. Swired. I can't even pronounce it.
There you go. Corrected it.
Oh, orbital S word.
Hey.
Yeah, the orbital. So you're in. Oh yeah, I see you're in. The damn it,
Yeah, I
Jim.
got it.
Listener feedback.
All right. Are you,
I'm recording.
Okay.
I've been recording because you never know what we're going to say.
you never know.
You never know.
Why don't you count down when you're ready, Jim, and we'll get going.
All right, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Dune Saga podcast. I'm David Moulton.
I'm Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood.
And this is our listener feedback episode corresponding with our review of Mentats of Dune. And this is a pretty big episode because not only is this listener feedback, but
And bad reviews.
but this is also our last regular show. I mean, we're not done because when the new books come out, we're going to talk about them. And
yeah, and
do
we'll
them.
do feedback on them and so on.
Yeah, so it's not like the Dune Saga podcast is over, but we've run out of content for the Dune Saga podcast until Navigators of Dune comes out in a few
And
months.
we could always do games and other stuff, but
Yeah.
we've kind of said that this is kind of where we're at. We're just going to be like there's Dune philosophy books, yada 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 out there, but this is kind of where we're kind of capped.
Yeah, we're kind of. I mean, we've been doing it for almost 3 years.
Yep.
So it's a long time. And granted, this last half year has been stretched for sure. But and thanks for everyone sticking with us. But there's more regular, awesome content to come in a new form, and we are going to talk about that towards the end of this show. So if you are interested in hearing about what's next, please stick around, and we'll get there. But I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're going to stick around. So
And we're going to examine each other's packages.
yeah, it's going to be comparing the packages.
Ooh.
Oh.
Whoa.
So let's get started with this listener feedback.
All right. First piece of listener feedback. This is from Brian Hoffman, who wrote, "Hi guys, just wanted to say thanks for the great show and to give you a heads up that I used your promo in the latest episode of my own pod, the Chippewa Valley Geek Podcast and Rhythm and Blues Review. Don't know if this is two shows or one. We've just completed an episode all about Dune and gaming opportunities in the Duneverse with an interview with Matt Colville, one of the guys who wrote the Dune CCG and RPG. As I used your show pretty extensively in my prep to bone up in the books I'd read years ago and to fill in some holes I hadn't read. I also gave you guys a special thanks for the cramming help in the closing credits. The promo itself appears around halfway through the episode, and there's a direct link to it. Go ahead, give it a listen to it if you have time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, if you like, feel free to give us a shout out and pass it on at your discretion. Thanks again, Brian Hoffman." So that's the Chippewa Valley Geek Podcast Rhythm and Blues Review. So if you want a little bit more Dune, is the place you can find it. And thanks for playing our promo.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And ChippewaValleyGeek.com seems to be their main website. They're also on Libsyn and other podcast venues.
Right. Yeah, so very good.
Yeah. While we're talking about other things to listen to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you ran across this, David.
Yeah, I ran across a new podcast, relatively new. As of when I found out about them, they had one episode. They now have three.
So it started in May or end of April.
Mm-hmm. And it's called the Dune Cast, or just Dune Cast.
Right.
And it is a Dune podcast.
And they're starting with the original.
Yeah.
The original Frank Herbert books.
I'm not sure how much they're going to do. If they're going beyond the Dune stuff, it seems to be about monthly.
Similar to what we did.
Similar to what we did. I know some people were out there shouting at them for us because they were claiming to be the ultimate. Is that the word they used?
They used the ultimate Dune podcast.
Dune podcast.
And we take issue with that a little bit. But if you are hungering for more Dune and you want to hear other voices talk about the Dune universe, you can listen to them. Their episodes are a little bit longer than ours. They're about 2 hours long, at least in some of them, and two guys just chatting about Dune. And if you love Dune and want to hear other people talk about Dune,
this is another place to go.
Yeah. So the URL for them is www.retrozap.com/Dune-cast.
Yeah.
And again, may not be the ultimate podcast about Dune, but hey, we want to share the love with them because they're obviously fellow lovers of Dune. And
definitely check them out. Tell them that we sent you their way.
Yes,
and
tell them
question their ultimateness.
Yeah, and tell them that the real Dune Saga podcast sent them.
Ask them if they can really be the ultimate podcast without a loot player.
I know they need a loot player. I mean, that's it. No loot player.
Yeah,
I mean
that's what does it.
It really does. I mean,
well, there it is.
So, which one of us is the real Kwisatz Haderach? I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Is it this podcast or that podcast? I don't know.
Are we like the Paul Atreides to
Duncan? I don't know. Maybe.
So.
We're reaching for it, maybe. Anyway, in all seriousness, we're joking here. Give them a listen, and if you like what they're doing, give them a thumbs up and tell them that tell them above all else that we sent you to listen to check them out. And mention them on Twitter. They're very active in Twitter, and let them know that we sent you. Yeah.
Cool.
And do you want to read the small comment from Jennifer Jones there, Jim?
Sure will. Jennifer writes, I have read most of these books 2 or 3 times and am so excited that my husband has found this podcast for me.
Well, Jennifer Jones, we are excited that your husband found this podcast as well. And hopefully you enjoy the journey as you listen to the episodes that we have put out in the past, and we'll continue to put out for at least another book or so.
Yeah. Well, until we stop. There's no more books, I guess.
Yes, until
we become professional loot players.
Yeah, that's true. The reality is that once we do Navigators, the only time we'll do a show, we'll probably keep this feed active. We'll only do a show when new content comes out.
Right.
A new movie comes out or something like that.
And I think I did hear they were putting another short story book together.
All right.
I think I did hear that.
We can review that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But look, I'm no Dr. Phil. I know sometimes you think I am.
What we know.
Yeah.
We know.
I mean, well, maybe I am. But Jennifer, I think you found yourself a keeper in this husband of yours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
pointing in our direction. I mean, I think I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Well,
cue the loot player.
Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of feedback this time around. Part of that's because of our being so spaced out these last couple episodes, and that's just the way it is. So let's get on to some bad reviews. I'll go ahead and read this first one, and then Jim, there's a link in the chat for the second one. Why don't you read that one when we're ready? Are you able to pull that up? Okay, this is a 2-star review from Kathy on Goodreads. She read this back in 2014. This book was really bad. I was very surprised. I've always enjoyed Herbert and Anderson's prequels to the original Dune books. It's varied some by series, but they have all been at least okay. Some have been really enjoyable. I gave Sisterhood of Dune 4 stars. How did the series go from pretty damn good to what the heck so quickly? It started off fine. I'm always stuck by the power of these archetypes. But if that's the right word, I felt a bit of awe as Valia described becoming a Reverend Mother and assessing the other memories for the first time. The Mentats, the Navigators, the Swordmasters, these positions are all so entrenched in my mind as powerful as any myth that I can think of. I wonder how endearing they might become. I wonder how enduring they might become. It's been 49 years, a drop in the bucket, of course, compared to most myths. I've just read about Coyote and the new Patricia Briggs, Mercy Thompson book, and Rainbow Serpent in the new unwritten comic, and I saw a nutty guy at the Zeus cover-up tattoo nightmares. Will these characters last too? Will their myths possibly become as pervasive? But then it just got bad. Most of the chapters are 3.5 pages long. Usually I enjoy Anderson's use of frequent changes of point of view, but this time it was just unbearable because every character acted as though we hadn't been introduced to them yet and repeated and repeated and repeated their history, motivations, plans, and thoughts over and over and over and over again. It was unnecessary and unbelievably boring, heavy-handed, overbearing, and just awful. Where was the editor? It was bad. I'm serious. Really bad. Bad. Are you getting the idea of how repetitively bad it was? Bad. And the characters were terrible too. They were so black and white, and they were just caricatures. They had no subtlety. They never did anything I didn't expect. There were no shades of gray. I didn't sympathize with or relate to any of the supposed heroes, much less the villains. In a good book, the characters would have depth, but these people were all shallow as a puddle. And stupid. So incredibly stupid. For example, how would people as stupidly smart as Ptolemy and Joseph think that recreating Cymax and Titans was a good idea? But even if they somehow thought it was going to be safe, and since Joseph's grandmother is Norma Senva, it seems hard to swallow. How could they not think it wouldn't start another war against them? People are already rioting over the idea of computers that don't even exist. How would they react when the figures of their worst nightmares returned? Plus, their plans just don't make any sense. How did anonymously attacking a small agricultural world that supported the Butlerian Manifesto do anything to put a halt to it? Unless all the planets knew that they too were going to be attacked by Titans if they support the Butlerians. Then it didn't accomplish anything except more subtlety in this book from supposedly smart people. According to this book, Norma was tortured by a Titan. Her husband devoted his life to fighting against the Cymax, but Joseph thought that was ironic that he was responsible for bringing an even more powerful version of them into being. Ironic equals stupid. And Norma, prescient Norma, who was tortured by a Titan, traveled with them to the first attack and watched. I bought into that. All of the characters in this book were all this stupid, shallowly motivated, without any complex actions, reactions, or emotions. The characterization was pitiful. Gibraltar was the only vaguely sympathetic character, and he just kept harping on the same theme the entire time. Worried about his legacy, frozen by emotion, and not at all using any kind of intellectual ability to make a decision and act. Rasmus is actually the most interesting character in the book, and the only one who showed some level and any ability to change. There's also a little bit more here. There was also a lot of things that were really preachy, quite heavy-handed, both in the text of the story and in the quotes at the beginning of the chapters. It got a bit much, but that was also true for Frank Herbert's original version too. As I think about it, compared to other problems with the book, it was hardly my biggest concern. This was a really bad book. It wasn't a familiar universe that was already enjoyable to me for the sake of that familiarity, building on a strong foundation. Then it would have been one-star book. I'm sorry. If it wasn't for that, it would have been a one-star book. If it was being introduced to this universe for the first time with this book, I would have quit reading partway through. I don't know what fell apart with this book because I've never read anything by Anderson I didn't like, and all the books of the Anderson Herbert were something between okay and really quite good. Nothing even vaguely like The Disaster. It's a big disappointment. She gave it 2 stars. Lots of information there. What do you think?
You asking me?
Yeah.
All right. So, first of all, this book is not overtly different from stylistically from the prior book in the series. So I'm not sure for me what the big deal is. It sounds like maybe instead of the book changing so much, that somewhere in her situation changed, maybe. But let me say this. She has a point.
All right.
She has a point where Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert tend to repeat background information, not much, but a little bit about a character when you run into him again. Mm-hmm. And they don't quite trust the reader. And I've seen that, and I acknowledge that. And that's not enough for me to give this book, 2 stars. But
Jim, thoughts?
Yeah, they do tend to rehash past events. However, that does not offend me in the least. I don't mind that.
The only person that really bothered me with was, I think it was Erasmus. He started to rehash some of his stuff, and I was like, do we really need this? Like this rehashing on this one? I don't.
yeah,
I don't know. But
she did mention Shades of Grey, and that totally took me another direction altogether.
50 different ones?
Yeah, 50 different shades of gray. Or, she didn't understand the whole Cymex over the agricultural area. And let me just defend that a little bit.
Yeah.
We got them testing against the worms, but this was really a trial run to see what the Cymex could do in a real situation. And was that an important world? Probably not in the grand schema, but this really showed what the Cymex were capable of.
I thought honestly, that was going to more than anything tie into Gilbertus, because that was the planet that he dreamed of going back to. Yeah, and I thought it was going to turn around and strike something up with him.
Yeah, and it didn't.
It didn't have any further consequences with him. So why it had to be that planet? Maybe just because we had heard about it, so we kind of understood.
Yeah, reference point rather than introduce an entirely new planet to us.
As far as her points of characters being dumb, some of the characters were dumb, especially.
I kind of agree with her sentiment of Gilbertus of saying, "Look, get off the damn planet." Yeah. I mean, I could hear that, right? And you certainly don't. We talked about that. We were kind of shouting at Gilbertus to not do it, and so in part, his death, you kind of say this is a tragedy.
Yeah.
He could have avoided this and didn't. So I'm with her on that a little bit.
And the Emperor.
Now hold on.
All right.
I think all three of us can agree that Ellen Ripley in Alien is an awesome character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't she get on a shuttle and forget about the damn cat? She's going around that ship, Jonesy, and it's like, I'm saying, will you get on the shuttle and get out of there, please?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that the cinematic version of something like that, somebody running into their own or getting caught up in something else or something that they really want to do, works better in a cinematic situation than perhaps in a literary situation.
Yeah.
I don't think you can't call Gilbertus dumb.
No. And you might argue that how many times, even in our own lives, do we cling on to something that we really should have let go of?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
We just cling on to it, and we obviously didn't die because of it, but there may have been some residual effects. That's something as simple as just not letting go of a car that we loved and we ended up sinking a lot of money into. We wouldn't have had to something else. I mean, this is a very human tendency to, he built the Mentat school and he did not want to see it die, and they were making progress and there was so much success with it. And, the willing to go somewhere and start over was, absurd to him.
Yeah.
Well, we as humans, we tend to put a lot of sentimental value into things that are worthless.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess some of the characters weren't. I still felt like there were surprises in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And for coming from someone who's been reading almost exclusively Dune for 3 years, I mean, to be able to say that, I think speaks a little bit of volume.
Yeah.
But maybe the Kathy grew as a reader, because I know that this style isn't for everyone.
Oh yeah.
The Herbert Anderson style isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
So maybe she changed a little bit. I
don't know.
Don't know. Yep. So, Jim, why don't you read the next one?
I cannot find
the link in the chat here that I saw.
There isn't. There should be two in a row.
Let's see. What do you mean? Are you talking about the chat up at
No, in the Google in our Facebook chat.
or Facebook chat?
Oh, see, I closed up Facebook's because I didn't want to get the tings and the
You mean like
booty
Scottish?
groups. Oh, I see. Okay, here we are.
My wife is sending pictures of different bodysuits she could be wearing in the background.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
All right. So
pretty hot actually.
that's review by Kathy. You want me to do the one by
The second one, Ludicrous
All right.
Twilight.
He's asking you to do it because it has the word loot in the beginning.
Yeah.
Ludicrous Twilight, and here comes the thing that wants me to hook up to
That's a
something
great
else.
name for a band. Great name for Ludicrous Twilight.
Ludicrous Twilight. I like
Yeah.
it. I like it.
All right. Ludicrous Twilight of Dune. Reading this book is like going on a commando raid at night, cutting your way through a forest with flamethrowers and light-enhanced goggles. And then, when you get to your destination, using the voice to force the people who came with you to do what they willingly came to do with you to do. Okay. Perhaps I should put a spoiler in front of that. I'll just put it here. Spoilers ahead. In my review for Sisterhood of Dune, I gave them the praise that it was the best Dune book they had produced. And he puts produced in quotes. Aside from Dune 7, this is by far the worst. It ties up most of the storylines from Sisterhood, setting up surprisingly little for the next book to do. However, the way it ties them up and the manner in which these books were set up just makes them even more pointless and essentially filler that creates a demand for it to supply. The next book is supposed to be Swordmasters of Dune, which is an interesting choice considering we only have one major swordmaster character, and she has sworn her life to the Butlerians.
It's a side note. He did write this in 2014, so that was before any announcements.
Right. 90% of what goes wrong in these books is due to there being maybe two characters that actually act in a rational manner, but that is sadly par for the course. And by rational, I mean the know what they should do. Okay, they know what they should do, but they don't do it until they are pretty much forced to. I have to break this down by different factions. And while I'm doing this, I'd like you to think about who the protagonist is in this book. The Butlerians are the same mindless, insane mob of fanatics that they were in Sisterhood. Law, where they are considered, has been thrown out the window. Seriously, it's not until a child of the royal family is trampled in the streets that everyone even considered trying to stop them in any serious manner. And what exactly do they want? The mind of man is holy. And like all hypocritical fanatics, they ignore some of the things that they need and then destroy everything else. The level of acceptable tech varies widely depending on who and what the action is centered on. Would you guys like to stop and discuss these points?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do that. And I don't know. I'm not sure that we need to necessarily read the whole review here either.
Mm-hmm.
So he obviously wrote this prior to knowing what the next book's going to be. So doesn't set up the next book. I don't know. I kind of disagree with this. I mean, we had a pretty big discussion about how this is really setting up the factions, like the Spacing Guild, the Mercantile Guild, the Banking Guild. I mean, I guess we're part of the same thing. The Chom and Talax. I mean, there's so much that's being set up here, and potentially even setting up Ix for us. We're getting a lot here.
And I wonder, part of me wonders from an outside perspective, right? Like, how does it really look like it's setting up things? Because we have a lot of knowledge to base our thoughts on.
Whoa. Yeah.
Right.
Deep.
If we had read this in order and we didn't know anything after this book, would you feel like this book was setting up stuff?
All right. If we would have read this book and never read the original Dune universe and weren't aware of the guilds, maybe we would feel differently. But we're kind of expecting it now because we know that these guilds exist in the future.
Yeah. And to me, that's what makes these books exciting. I mean, although I remember saying with the last book, if someone hadn't read any of the other prequel stuff, I probably would recommend Sisterhood as a good launching point, even without the Legends books, having read them. I think this is a great continuation of that book, and you could continue on with this. However, as a fan of Dune, I really think that these books are really meant for the fan of Dune that knows about the universe rather than the casual new person. And it's weird because when I was looking for bad reviews on Goodreads, a lot of the reviews said I read this as the first expanded universe book I read because they got it from some contest. A lot of people, I guess there was some contest, and the book got given out to a lot of Goodreads people, and this was their first, and then they went back and read Sisterhood because they enjoyed it, which is crazy because I just cannot see this book as a launch point.
Well, the only justification comes from the other bad review he said is that they do give just a little bit of background when they introduce the characters again, and for those people that know the characters are like, oh, seriously, you're doing this again? But for someone that hasn't read, who's launching this book for the first time, that's important background. Maybe enough to give them enough to read the story without reading Sisterhood.
Yeah, you could be right. And most of them did say, like, if you have a choice, read Sisterhood first because that really completes it. But it was interesting. I mean, I really do feel like this sets up a lot, and there's a lot that I'm excited about, and I'm actually really glad that we're not going to have a whole lot of time before Navigators comes out, because that would suck. If we had any more time than we do, it would have been a real pain.
Because we'd forget.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're like,
we would
what
forget.
happened in Mentats?
I mean,
Yeah.
And there is one point in that last paragraph that I read that I want to agree with.
Yeah.
And that is allowing Manfred to go as far as he went, and then not putting a foot down until he kills somebody.
Yeah.
Of a powerful person. But it's a story.
It is,
not everything,
but yeah.
Not everything is going to work exactly logically or ideally, I guess.
Right.
Okay, he goes on. The Bene Gesserit. Oh God, for Frack's sake, I'll just say that. Seriously, these parts of the book are just atrocious. Especially in the story of Mother Superior trying to bring back, or trying to bring the Orthodox sisters from the Sisterhood back into the fold before she dies. Every chapter we're reminded of how. Okay.
Because the idea of the Bene Gesserit part being atrocious is this. We talked about this already. I didn't feel it was atrocious because what they did is they went to bring it together, the two lines together. We got voice, we got truth saying, we got the fighting style. Holy Hannah, what do you mean this wasn't important or was terrible?
No. Well, not Dorothea, but Raquella explains it, that this organization is not going to work if they aren't together and if there's a bunch of infighting going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at any rate, every chapter we're reminded about how close to death she is and how she's using all of her bodily control to stay alive. Except for the one chapter she feels revitalized and goes jogging. Truthsayers become the new ball to toss around, with everyone having to use clever wording to get out of getting caught in a lie. Other than that, one time, a Reverend Mother calls someone on a lie of omission. Everyone is super scared of the truth sayers, and they are 100% accurate as long as it doesn't interfere with the plot.
There's a lot of times the truth sayer was used, and not just the one lie of omission. But anyway.
Yeah.
I'm just skimming over this. I think we can probably stop there. He really does break down almost every plot point, and it goes on for quite some time. In my preview of it, I just kind of read the beginning. So we can stop. Let's the very last paragraph. Why don't you skip down to that?
Okay, this one was really hard to finish. I literally had to take the day and sit down and force myself. I want to issue a challenge. Give me a page number and I'll flip to it and find at least one thing wrong with the book, either internally or within accepted Dune canon. I'm serious about that too.
I don't know if that could be done. I mean, you really have to harp.
Yeah, well, this guy, he didn't like the book, or he didn't like it. If he didn't, why read it?
He also sets himself up being a Dune expert by saying that last comment.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'll tell you why this is not canon or why this is terrible. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he had points we discussed, but at the same time, this was someone who didn't like the book, forced themselves to finish it, and as a result, is full of contempt, and then took to verbalizing it. So
yeah,
I mean, and everyone's open to their opinion. You don't have to like this book, and he had some valid points that I'm fine with conceding. He also had some that I'm not. So everyone's a person.
Do we need any more bad reviews? Or are we good with that?
I'm good with that.
I'm great with that. Let's start with bad reviews. I think that's good enough.
So that brings us to the end of our main stuff here.
Are we talking packages now?
And before we get into what the future is,
packages,
I have special packages for Jim and Scott, and I had to mail Jim his far enough in advance for this, and we actually delayed the show. One of the many times that we delayed recording this bracket of shows was because I was waiting for this to get done. So you guys can open your stuff.
Okay.
It's not fair. Jim has an advantage. He slid his open already.
Yeah, Jim's already half opened his box. Celebrating our 3 years of doing the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Okay.
You have to take the tape off of this side.
Oh.
Yeah. Pull it from the bottom. Scott's a little behind.
Okay.
Look at this. Something new for the studio. Look at that.
Yeah. So
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, 3 of us got our signs.
That's right.
Of our logo.
All right.
Yeah. So don't use the guy who the shop that made this, which is Creative Signworks in Lancaster, PA. They were awesome to make these signs for me. He put some tape on the back, double-sided tape. I'm going to warn you right now, do not use it because I am repairing my wall. It sticks fast and hard. So what I would recommend is it is a styrofoam, like a harder styrofoam base for the sign. So you can screw small screws in with to put a wire on the back. Just make sure you don't put too big ones in so that it goes through. Just be careful about where you put weight too, because he said that it's sturdy, but if you pressure on it too hard, it'll bruise.
So for those of you that did not see this, we got the logo, the logo for the Dune Saga podcast. Mr. Moulton here sent Jim and I copies of it, blowing up to foot and a half by foot and a half, about right. 2 foot
It's
by
19 inches by 19 inches.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is not blown up. This is the actual size of our iTunes logo. This is
very
what
good.
iTunes requires.
Well, right there.
That size. Yeah.
That's because they're going to
Wow.
release a tablet this big.
Yeah.
In the future.
Well,
So-
thank you, David. That's awesome.
That is awesome. Thank you, David.
Something for your walls.
There we
for
go.
my
I need
wall.
more stuff for my walls.
Yeah, I had a when we were doing the Lencast, we had a sign made for our studio, and when we shut down, I kept the sign for my apartment on the wall, and I always liked having it up. And I was like, man, that's what we need. So,
Dune Saga
Dune Saga
podcast.
podcast.
That's awesome.
So, moving on from me being the best co-host these guys have ever had.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, who's not going to sing David's praises now?
I know, right? Let's talk about our future and what's going on. We're going to have definitely do a short episode introducing our next project, which goes by the name of the Orbital Sword.
Sorry.
God
That
bless you.
was for emphasis.
Emphasis of the
No.
Orbital Sword.
Yeah. Pah.
And so what we're going to be doing is a science fiction,
Yeah.
a science fiction fantasy book club, basically like the same structure we've been doing the Dune Saga podcast. We want lots of listener interaction. Hopefully we'll have you guys voting on the books that we read and so forth moving forward. And
But not following a series per se.
right. I mean,
So
yeah.
I mean, we can, but probably shorter series if we do, and certainly also looking for one-offs that
Yeah.
we can read. And did you give them the title of it? So the Orbital Sword, right?
The Orbital Sword.
And the idea being that both sci-fi and fantasy are potential
Yeah.
candidates.
Yeah, so we're kind of theorizing we're on a sword-shaped space station, kind of gliding on the horizon of the future and tied to the past, kind of fantasy sci-fi type thing going for it. So I'm really excited about this. Jim cannot stop playing the lute about it, and
Seriously.
it's gotten crazy.
I'm just going to bring my catapult with an astronaut.
Catapulted astronaut was almost her name. So we're going to be doing a lot of exciting things with this. Right now, we're planning the website and how to do stuff with voting for you guys, so you can vote on books, all that kind of stuff. So we're not launching quite yet, but we'll be there in a month or so.
And probably the first book or so we will select, but we really want to get you folks in there.
Yeah. So hopefully the idea is if we read book number 1 of a series, you can vote on reading book number 2 or something else. And then this way, we only read as much of a series as you, the listeners, want us to read. And then we can move on to something else.
Mhm.
So,
So if you don't say anything, we'll just keep reading.
yeah, that's true. So it'll be all about you guys vocalizing.
Yeah.
So we will be back with another show, short intro show. To
Probably in the next month or so, we'll have a short intro show to kind of introduce it, launch it, and say, here's the book we're
here's
reading.
the book. Yep. Get
Join
ready.
us.
Yeah. If you've been with us since the beginning of the Dune podcast, thank you. And you, of course, listened to our first show and our intro show and expect something similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll release it here as well as
You'll see it on the Dune channel as well as the new feed.
yeah, as you feed. Jim, how excited are you?
Oh, I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to learning new things and looking at different things.
Yeah.
David,
Yeah.
I want to sincerely thank you for inviting me to be a part of this.
Wow, I'm really glad for both of you being involved in this project going forward. I definitely picked. The Dune Saga podcast was kind of my dream baby, and I definitely picked the right guys to do this with.
I would have
But-
never read these books unless you had done this.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad to have opened your horizons, and I hope that when you pick
Well,
me,
I would have to say you've opened my horizons, and it's actually kind of a gift.
I remember when we started, Jim didn't think he could podcast. He's, I don't know anything about these books. And I said, good.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's gonna be exciting because I know you're gonna read some fantasy coming up, and I know that's not your thing. So that'll be an adventure too, huh?
Yeah. It'll be interesting. And I know that I said I didn't want to, but what the hell? One book a month, I can handle it. And who knows? I may become enriched in that as much as I have in reading Dune.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Jim, how many books a month do you read? I mean, so one book a month, this isn't going to be much for you.
No.
So, for me, if you'd asked me like 2 years ago, Scott, do you read predominantly science fiction or fantasy? I would have said hands down science fiction.
Yeah.
But if I look at my reading list on Audible over the past 2 years, mostly exclusively fantasy.
Really?
Yeah. So like the Wheel of Time series I read, I went through like a bunch of Brandon Sanderson stuff, all of fantasy. Game of Thrones is all fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a lot of fantasy, even though I still consider myself predominantly a science fiction guy.
Dude, this is going to be interesting because I kind of walk the line, and it's funny because I walk the line, but I haven't read a lot of the
Johnny
big.
Cash.
I am Johnny Cash.
Right. Yeah.
Secret. You guys didn't know.
Yes, his real name's Sue.
But I haven't read the big ones, right? Like it's weird. Like people are like, oh, what do you think of this guy? It's like I've read a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy, but it's like the stuff that I read isn't the mainstream stuff, or it's not the popular stuff. It just happens to be something someone handed me, or something I found on my own, or whatever. So this is going to be interesting for me too. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good. So stay tuned. Not much more to talk about here, and we'll definitely be back for more. But in the time being, I'm David Moulton.
I'm Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood. And may Shai Hulud clear the path before you.
Woo.
Boom. That works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. Definitely works.
Yeah. Cool. You want to stop broadcasting as well?
No, I'm just going to keep broadcasting.
Forever.
Oh, no.
Forever.
Okay.